Hello, good evening. Welcome to Depot. Hi, my name is Sarah van Dordrecht. I'm the director of Depot, and I'm very glad to host the final evening of the WIENWOCHE discourse program this year. We had a very interesting week with awesome speakers. Thanks again for doing this together, and I'm very happy that we have this huge podium tonight with great guests who have all been on the podium at the Depot before, I suppose, several times. So I would like to show you again this awesome reader, Art and Activism in Vienna. Tonight it's free, so grab your last copy. And yeah, let's see what the next 10 years will bring.
I will maybe start because somehow this year we had this idea of bringing together all the former directors and curators of WIENWOCHE, and as I said, as we don't have anyone to moderate our conversation this evening, we kind of thought to split our conversation in several rounds. The first round would be about the visions and the methods, what was important for the work, what was the approach, what did it concentrate on, who were the visitors, who were the address communities, and what was the context of the annual topic, and how did you shape the topic at all. The second round, so each of the speakers would be 5 minutes talking about this, and then we will probably have some time to exchange. The second round would be around challenges, and how to address them and how to resolve them, what can't we do, what is the role of activism in art. The third round would be how do you see WIENWOCHE in the next 10 years, and what would you like to be or to remain as your heritage or your achievement that for like future directors would always start from in the next years. And the fourth round would be great if the visitors would also like to exchange with us and if we can discuss together some topics related to WIENWOCHE. So, yes, please start as you wish, in any order.
Okay, then I can start as the very, the very starter for the WIENWOCHE. My name is Petja Dimitrova, and I'm one of the first edition team member of curators, that we were 3, from the time of 2011 to 2015. This was the starting of WIENWOCHE, 2012. 11 was actually the initiative, was negotiated, the budget was negotiated, this frame of new cultural budget and possibility for production for the independent scene was negotiated. Maybe you know a little bit the history, but with the small coalition, new coalition member by the Green Party, after many debates, many years debates, including me and some other colleagues, about relevant opening of working conditions and topic for or relevant topic for the post-migrant society. What is production, cultural production in the post-migrant society? And the WIENWOCHE with 2 other initiatives, Kulturgema and Shift, Schiene, were negotiated by the Green Party. So actually the question of what could be this, what kind of profile should be the festival. It's a state festival. It's located in Vienna. It should relate to the living conditions, the topics, the discourses, the protagonists in Vienna, and also debate who will lead the festival. All these things we started. So to say it short, we started for 5 years to search for a kind of development and profile on on the festival. The big struggle that we had was that it was negotiated by the Green Party as new negotiation how cultural money should be used for the free distribution for the free scene, and cultural money and budget lead until now by the big parties, governmental parties in Vienna. So Donauinsel, Stichwort, Staatsfestival von ÖVP and so on. And our struggles was as team, as we, how happy we were and enthusiastic, all the time the struggle of the mark that this is a party festival. And this was the big struggle of us, besides party festival in the sense of Green Party. It was big ignorance, big sarcasm or irony on the media, on the perception that it was marked as green, although no influence was in the board. It was independent association, Verein, was responsible and so on. It was an open call, kind of competition and so on. For the curatorial team, for the concept, and actually we applied with my colleagues Radostina Patulova and Jan Gülcu, applied with the concept of there are so many initiatives and projects in the free scene in Vienna that are still working for important, relevant political topic for this city. They are part of the definition of cultural production, of notion of art and culture in this city. How we can think and include them within this, or somehow to distribute resources for this long-term work that they leisten, because they give an effort. And that's why the major idea was based on open calls on new production of projects, to include and to give the possibility of initiatives, of associations, of collectives, of collective work, and organizations, but also individuals, to think their work until now with particular resources in a format that could be perceived in a larger audience through the festival. So you have to tell me the time because I enlarged too long. But
I will not control the time.
Okay, me too. I'm also bad in this. So actually, our approach was to work with cultural initiatives that work politically on all important topics on this city, I would say, against exclusion, against racism, against homophobia, on anti-Semitism and so on. So all these topics that are actually burning, but are quite marked as PCs and annoying in the cultural production. So for us it was important to work with these political topics. And many initiatives. We three came from cultural production and activism in Vienna many years ago in different initiatives that doesn't relate so much on art and culture, but are important to lead on discourses. For example, the same year we worked on 1st of March Transnational Migrant Strike Day. So we wanted, it was a kind of, let's say, symbolic action of organization and mobilization of many actors to establish the day of the International Day of Migrants. Like 1st of May, the International Day of Workers, to try lead to this initiative in USA, One Day Without Us. So without us, so to say, the migrant, the subject of migrant, whatever this could be as identity, as figure of agency, of challenging the society, of challenging the democracy of this country. And these are the networks and connections that we kind of made a crossroad of initiatives of production, of distributing of resources, and many other, so based on open call, many other initiatives applied, and actually through the 4 years we were full with different formats and experiments on collective work based. Okay, I will stop here because it's too much maybe, and we can elaborate more.
We plan to present ourselves, but I think it's not so many people who don't know us, but I'm Ivana Marjanović, and I was working for 4 years with 3 festival editions at the WIENWOCHE, and I come from Belgrade, and I studied here my doctorate, and after WIENWOCHE I moved to Innsbruck for private reasons, and then I applied there for a job, and now I'm director of Kunstraum in Innsbruck, and I work together with Nataša Mackuljak at WIENWOCHE 2016 edition, closing with 2018.
Yes. We agreed how to present ourselves, so we will follow this. Yeah. So my name is Nataša Mackuljak, and as Ivana said, we co-curated WIENWOCHE Festival 2016, 17, and 18. I come from Brčko, from Bosnia and Herzegovina, from Yugoslavia, and I come from the field of activism first of all, but then also I studied in Academy of Fine Arts where I finished my master, and in Italy also I was living and working in the field of media. Yeah, now I'm also in WIENWOCHE involved as executive director. So maybe I can go on with the the main round, the first round of the topics. So Ivana and me, we applied in 2015 for the position, curatorial position, and we was really very much enthusiastic. We worked many, like for a month or something on the application, and we had a lot of ideas, and our concept was for WIENWOCHE proposal was kind of, we could describe it in some following, some keywords, like accessibility, participation, collectivity, experimentation, and politics of interconnectedness. And what was important for us was also to kind of bring, as we was the second, somebody who kind of continued, took, as Petja was saying, for them was the beginning. For us was not the beginning, but we had already a very created base. There is a community created. There was a kind of festival profile. Yes. So for us, was as a curator, it's important to say that we wanted to maintain continuities of what was developed by Petja, Rado, and Jan before. And for us, the festival was kind of a space for enthusiasm, affective connectedness, and social approximation. And it was for us also a possibility that like a festival that opens possibility of linking people beyond single identities, but also how to say, practicing collectivity, imagining the world otherwise, and celebrating this as a possibility. And for others, but also for us, because we, Ivana and me, we kind of also from the very beginning identified with the festival also personally, because we also at that time in 2015 we were quiet or half new in the city, and also living in sometimes difficult conditions, precarious, and we was already friends. And for us, the topic that we proposed the first year, Forever Together, was actually came from our personal experiences. And as I said, it was important to make these continuities. What was important is to support already existing structures. So we didn't want to change, how to say, a lot. We wanted to think about how to break, so to say, neoliberal practices within neoliberal economical context. And one of the examples, what was for us important was not to go on also in a structural manner, in a sense that we wanted to keep working with people who was already part of, who was working in WIENWOCHE, so we didn't want to change things like to say, new directors came now, we change everything. Starting from the visual identity was important to go on with the graphic designers, with Toledo and Petja, so we go on. We also we continued working with them, although it was different approach a little bit because we kind of supported projects and their own images and so, but we worked, as I said, with the same people. And this was also with all the other, in a production, in a PR, everyone who wanted to stay, we talked to them, and those who wanted to stay, they stayed with us. This is one important thing for us. The other was also to think of continuities in a sense, to support also initiatives, movements, and community that was already created, that was actually part of WIENWOCHE, that was existing before or so. Although it was everything through open call, most of our projects actually always, just few projects we had initiated by ourselves, but it was most, we also continued with this open call. There was people who actually also continued, like so, and this was like people and initiatives, and this was a period also of refugee protest and migrant issues. So, for example, this was a community that also continued working with us. What we expanded more, I have to say, it was a bit of, it was expansion of our own community, so to say, ex-Yugoslav. This happened somehow, also by, just happened, right? Because, yeah, I mean, we had our own community, but we had also, we got to know a lot other ex-U communities in the festival as well. And yeah, as I said, so some names for us was important also to give still space, for example, like Ljubomir Bratić, we had Langerweg der Gastarbeit, and this was already a kind of, there was a project that were before in previous years, like all these projects around archive of migration archive. Also Ursula Napravnik, but Ivana, you will say more about the projects, but she was kind of taking part continuously as well, and also, as I said, all the projects that were turning around no border politics, the projects that supported the movement around refugee protest camp. Open call, we kept this open call, but for us was also, it was very important, and it was important for us in the open call. This selection process was very difficult for us, selection process. But our strategy was also to reach as many as possible personally. So we had a lot of interviews, a lot of personal talks with many projects, and it was important to talk to people and to see, like, really, with the years, within 3 years, there was a kind of, we got this experience that it only with talking with certain position, it was clear what's important also to support and whom to support. And so it turns, for example, it turned out that we supported, they were really people who just came in Vienna, people from Syria back then as refugees, and they applied, and this application was very weak, but we was very curious to talk to them, and then when we talked to them, it turned out that in this group there was like people a person, for example, who was so famous as a scenographer in Syria, nobody knew about him in Vienna. So such positions to kind of give a space and have possibility to share and exchange. And so was like this principle, not we follow this principle not to look only for these prominent positions of artists and activists, but also to kind of get to know and start from a zero somehow without kind of previous ideas or prejudice or whatsoever. And also, what after when we selected the project, what we thought also was also important for us to create a kind of, if possible, although it is short of time, to create a community in a way, that the exchange within the projects, within people happens also. And so we created these meetings, we call them incubators, where the projects actually got the chance, people got the chance to get to know each other, and the purpose was mostly also to support each other, to exchange and on structural or whatever different levels. Also, what we introduced is a new, but also half new, because in 2012 there were already working groups introduced. But we introduced them in a way that everybody who wanted to join in WIENWOCHE could join, and so there was not a selection process of people, so there was just a call for people to come and take part. So out of this it came always one event, one project. People got together and then produce a new, in this working group they produce a new production event. We also, when we made application, maybe this will be the next round, like what was the challenge for the space. We wanted to have a space, but this was a challenge, and this was, for example, something where we failed. But we can talk about this, Ivana, please.
Yes, so I will add on some aspects that Nataša didn't go so much into detail, and also kind of reflect back to what Petja said. And I think that for us, I was going now through all these open calls and texts that we wrote and the projects and everything. And as I'm not here in Vienna since 3 years, it's also kind of really, going back to this time, and I'm not meeting people that were at the festival regularly, so it's kind of also gets kind of like you look at some photo album, many years ago. And it's also like WIENWOCHE, it's a challenging festival. It's a big challenge to curate from the open call. It has to also be that way because this is in the foundation of the festival. It has to have an open call, and there was always this option. We can always invite a curate outside of it, but it's also, you live in Vienna, you know some people, of course you don't know everybody. And some people that you know, they also apply, or some people maybe you don't know personally, but you know about them. So things also get personal. And it's also a specific scene that WIENWOCHE is moving around. So we were very careful in kind of like how to act in this kind of situation where you have this power to select and give money, and people want to meet you, talk to you, and somehow maybe also prepare for this. But this is also difficult because we said everybody come to public event, and then we talk publicly and so on. So this is kind of all tricky things. But we didn't want to make this open call irrelevant, because some festivals do it that way. To kind of like pro forma do the open call and then curate everything more or less as usually curatorial process is happening. Like you invite artists you worked with, you know how they work, and this is completely different. Mostly you work with people you never worked before, and it's a big challenge also to produce so many new projects. But we wanted to take this seriously, the open call, because it's very difficult to ignore and then pretend that there is this open call, and then it becomes like a fake open call. So we didn't want to, and it's a lot of applications, so it's not easy to reduce this to kind of like a minimum. If you receive, I don't know, 170, 200 applications. And our policy was we didn't want to do a lot of projects. We reduced a lot from, I think that in the past there were more, and later, again, there were much more projects than we did select from the open call. Besides these open working groups that we initiated with choosing some artists to kind of do artistic direction of these projects. So our policy was we never cut the budget, so we take the projects with budgets that they apply for. We didn't kind of negotiate on these things, and we reduced the number of projects so that projects have more money. Because it was important, anyway, because they are usually groups, and in the end it's still not enough money. It's not like enormous resources for doing new productions. So this was for us important. I think that one, maybe what Petja mentioned, that their interest was very strong, activist. Our interest was, and we wanted it to have also very strong artistic side. I think that maybe this is something that changed more in this period, but still not all projects were artistic projects. And I think this is something tricky about WIENWOCHE, is this kind of profile that is some kind of a hybrid practice of mixture of artistic activism or artistic projects that deal with political topics that are not activist, some kind of activist art, then also cultural production projects that are curated projects. So it's a kind of like a very diverse kind of profile of the festival. But it was always important. It's not here about cultural production. We celebrate diversity. It was festival, of course, create some kind of time and space and celebrate this coming together and exchange and some kind of unexpected encounters in a specific moment and some kind of like intervention in the public space. But it was also like to bring the topics that are not so much talked about, also to provoke, to kind of maybe shake some things, it was not about culture, and we celebrate diversity and eat different food from different kitchens and cook. I mean, it's also nice to get together and cook, but it was about all these different topics, political topics. And we also worked together before on a performance project. So we had also both. I was working on my dissertation that time that was about one activist festival and performative productions that they did, like cabaret and performance. So we had a very strong also performative interest. This is also something that I think that was popping up again and again at the festival. Because for us also it was festival is something, it's some kind of live arts, live experience, live exchange. I think there was this collective, and this was important, but it was also not for us like it has to be a group of people who work together. We also worked with single artists, like not the majority, but we didn't like exclude completely. We also kind of formulated, we want political projects, but also like under quotation marks, apolitical projects. Like we didn't want what is maybe immediately understood as activist, political, artistic, you know. So we wanted to open it a little bit more. And we had this the first topic, Forever Together, Politics of Connection, Love and Friendship, which was kind of coming from our moment of experiences and what was the topics that were important for us. And also these networks around us for kind of surviving these kind of difficult periods of being in Vienna. It was very important, and also for people around us who were also struggling, you know, to get kind of like all kind of visa papers to stay and not go, not be deported and all these kind of things. This was the starting point for us. So it was this kind of celebrating these networks, different forms of living together. Here are Nino and Helga. They did a project also at the first edition, Wildes Fleisch, How to Live Together. This was like different forms of living together, migrants, but not migrants. Also, we had anti-fascist ballet school in Lugner City, Meisterin in the Unsichtbarkeit, about homeless women, because it was also about how they manage in this kind of surviving without having a home. And many other projects. There are too many to mention in this short time. The next year was for us a topic, Dolce far niente, life beyond capitalist production. We repeated this graffiti that was circulating in that time in the city, Morgen mach ich blau, tomorrow I won't work. It was this topic of work, of work conditions, of also reflecting on our own work reality, of directing like festival with a very intensive work life, this work-life balance. This was the also not only about work, but also about who can work, you know, who can even have this luxus of asking for rest. On one hand, those who come to this enormous intensity, and then on the other hand, those who cannot even don't have the right to work. This topic was more difficult to put it in the open call and to get like the response, because it's very specific. It's not so broad, but we had interesting from the research, from people who were coming from university to people coming from social field and social movements like Bedürfniszentrale. It was about people who are disabled by society. The disability was a big topic also, like this Menschen im Bad project, about people who are suffering from Parkinson, other people who have some kind of physical or psychical barriers in working. Then we had some very artistic projects, Sanatorium Sonnenland, like some kind of rehabilitation space, very also fun and performative. And the last year was on boundaries, bypasses, and commons. We knew that it's a last year, and we wanted to go back and some kind of like put in the forefront this topic of borders, and also like the city and its borders. I think I will end here because we have to have the next speakers. Yes.
Yeah, then I continue. It was not really right after the festival when I was coming in, but I started working at WIENWOCHE as a curator together with Deniz in 2022. And Henry was already before me curating the festivals 2 years before, I think, together with Natalie Assmann. And so I was coming in like a kind of prepared structure, but it was also a lot of things happening. So like the open call, I think it was always a very fixed part in this whole WIENWOCHE time. And our vision was really to focus on the term of normality, and also about thinking of how you see normality in the future and reflect on that. So that was our open call theme in general, and we had many applications. And I think what was kind of new in that year was that there were many applications from international artists and projects. So, and I think that this was also new because of Corona. So there were a lot of projects applying with hybrid projects, like to have it online. And so we were coming like to the question how we deal with that, because it was always a very Viennese festival, and this question wasn't, I think I felt that it wasn't there so strong, like, but we had some international projects, and I think we managed it, and yeah, but I think this is still an open question of how WIENWOCHE, how international WIENWOCHE is in general. And what was also very strong, yeah, goal for us was to create or have this festival, to have a very strong collective feeling at the festival. And so we had an exhibition going on where a lot of projects were at the same time at the same spot. So a collective exhibition, and I think that was like the most strongest part in or the vision. I think that the bubble for WIENWOCHE is always a little. It changed over the years, I think, and the back to normality. I think the target group, it was not very different from other from the WIENWOCHE audience, but it had a very strong like queer feminist approach also, and I think that a lot of projects also the years before. So this was big topics. And yeah, so I was just 1 year there. It was kind of short. And yeah, I give the word to you now, because you're the first year, like kind of,
Yeah.
and
Maybe Deniz can start first.
Yeah.
I half moderate already, as you see.
Hello, my name is Deniz Güvensoy, and I am originally from Istanbul, Turkey, and I am an academic and curator. And this year's theme was working class ecologies, and we were kind of concerned with this feminist topic of reproductive labor, the unpaid labor of women at first, and the kind of labor that reproduces a society, which is not considered as work. So like it includes childbirth and also housework. But also we wanted to extend it to the general working class issues, and also include the problem of essential workers, which was actually become a little bit more obvious, their problems during the COVID times, because they are the class that they have to work, they cannot stop to work, even this conditions of the pandemic, and they do really essential work that maintains our well-being. However, they are really underpaid. And also it includes how the border regime precarized migrant workers, because there is this issue which was a kind of topic, the Eastern European care workers who come to Europe to work, and they don't have basic working rights, and they are not capable of understanding the language, so they don't know how to defend their rights, and they have to stay at houses for 24-hour care, so they have lots of problems. So these issues are actually kind of complex and not so much discussed in the art world, and it was a bit hard to bring it to the discussion. And we also wanted to introduce the ecology question to it, and kind of like broaden the subject into the topic of care, because this care includes the care that humans are showing to each other, also to the planet, and there is always this exploitation and struggle is happening in this notion because of this lack of care. So that's why we wanted to see the problems of the ecological problems from the perspective of the working class, who are the most affected class by these problems, as we see in the pandemic. And also this also includes our personal experiences, because we also had to do some care work when we came to Vienna as international students, and most of the international students have work restrictions in Austria, especially non-EU students, so they have to work in these areas, and they are much precarized. We made kind of a mixture of open call, and we also invited some projects, but two projects. One was on this reproductive labor theme, doing the dirty work, and the other was more our relation with the non-humans, like the material communities, like the plants, the environment, animals, and how they are also affected by our not understanding of how to act in an ocean of care. So this Fancies Insects and Embroidery project is about is part of a research project which is focusing on the problems in a Swedish mine, and that can be a bit international because we had invited Swedish Sami women, and they had to leave their houses because the area that they were living were evacuated due to that mine, and so they had this loss and trauma, and we made an embroidery workshop for them. And what was nice about this year that there are so many different approaches and different projects, and they kind of intersect with each other, and they were, however they were coming from different cultural backgrounds and different projects, they kind of intersect. But the pity was that the program was too intense and everybody was too much dealing with their own projects, so they couldn't, I think, build a dialogue between them. It would be so nice if we could have brought them together and they would share more experiences. But in the general, I think it was very nice to see that common struggles are happening everywhere. And another challenge was like, because it's a working class team, it's not so much I think it was kind of not very popular and like a new topic, especially when you like try to connect it with the ecology. So people find it a bit difficult to you know, thematize it in an artistic context. But in the end, actually, they seem very theoretical, but they are very essential things, because they are the things that consider our basic life, vital necessities of having food, having shelter, and wearing clothes, and like really human things, and how the exploitation of the labor and exploitation of the planet is kind of connecting around these issues. Like there was also, for example, a project about fast fashion industry, which reveals that the cheap labor conditions in the global south and how the planet is affected by the fast fashion industry. So actually, the ecological struggle, the non-human struggle, and the working class struggles are kind of getting are connected. So yeah, that's, I think, the topics.
Yeah, maybe I could just add some things. I would say that we have this privilege to actually shape the festival in the next years according to this conversation, and I'm very thankful for this opportunity of exchange with you. I think that this year's topic took many interests of former directors into consideration. But I would say, if I would have to define somehow the approach, I would definitely say that it's a more materialist feminist approach this year that we were kind of concentrated on, but this didn't mean that we were not acknowledging different struggles. For me, it was very important that our projects were somehow based locally, because we have Nataša, who is always telling us many things how it was, so like to give this knowledge further. And one of the things was that we are somehow not forced, but like somehow, let's say, we should base our projects on Vienna and the communities living in Vienna, and this did happen. And but the way that like the local communities address the problems, they also address them globally in some way. And when we talk about, like, for example, collaborations between living in Vienna, like for example this project How Many Layers, it's a collaboration between not only like any more migrant people or post-migrant people, but also the, let's say, somehow these collaborations extend more to some new communities that usually wouldn't have heard of WIENWOCHE. And yes, there exist communities that haven't heard of the festival. And also when we hear about the festival today, it is still connected to the Green Party. So this was something that we had to also clarify again in the press conference. So this is, these things, they just come up on and on. I would like to say that there is a very important point this year, and that is that the festival is made by the so-called third country nationals, It is not, anymore us and them, kind of, in the sense that, yes, directors are members of the EU states, so both Deniz and me are so-called third country nationals, and I think this is a position which is even more inviting for the communities, and I would say that they probably, share much more, let's say, problems, unfortunately, let's call it challenges. And so the position from which the festival was kind of made is definitely this kind of lived so-called third country national perspective, which I find really relevant and example for other institutions to follow up. Yes, please follow up. This is like my, future wish. Yeah, so I think that the topic attracted this year many Latin American communities, and this is something which was kind of new, that these communities were so present on like an annual issue of the festival. This is something that we found really interesting, because somehow when in conversations of asking them why was this topic so relevant for you, they kind of addressed them to the topics back in their home countries, like the indigenous struggles, actually, struggles about the land, and the like anti-capitalist struggles, also on the north of Sweden, nevertheless, as part of EU. So many global south perspectives were present this year, but also in collaboration with citizens. Yeah, and yes, I make a difference between citizens and non-citizens, because for many people, WIENWOCHE is still the only possibility to express their opinions, especially political opinions, because they don't have the right to vote. They cannot organize politically, and so somehow WIENWOCHE is the only place where they could really feel free, as much as we can provide this kind of safety for them, this relatively safe space to express, their political claims. So yes, I guess I'm already talking 5 minutes.
But I think I think it's interesting to think, if you say what kind of project came this year and what are the claims or needs for realizing of project. If you say that Latin American community or South American migrants in Vienna, why? What kind of discourse are relevant now? What is the challenge or the demands? Who has demands? Because actually, our desire when we started with WIENWOCHE was we want to work with the civil society, what this could be, on the larger sense, to enable a kind of a project in a sense of to continue their work and their demands, to enable the space for their demands to be more visible, but to develop on certain formats. What could be and also to experiment or to think on artistic formats, what these formats can do, so to say. This is a bit German translation, but was können sie. But and our networks, our calls, our desire, so to say, who we want to reach, were actually through our specific time. So we focus the topics through all these years on very yeah, any curatorial team did that, but on very local-based debates and conflicts but larger society processes that has also history. So because we lived much longer, let's say certain generation, we were part of struggles and debates that we knew what we can bring again that has historical relevance and to push a little bit, to pin. And this was the experience that actually the projects were a mix of activist practices to think how they could be developed and transferred in a format that can get more attention, audience, and conflicts, to expand the conflict, so to say. And through this conflict, we learned how to define audience, because the desire of full festival with visitors is difficult with these small kind of specific hybrid topics that are really activist based. So audience is not the relevance of this, but through these conflicts and to these debates as disturbance in a way from the topics, the audience was aware in media, in small articles, and a lot about angriness, Aufregung, how to say, a protest of the opposition, so the right wing. The right wing, they made press conferences, they always focused on kind of their networks of the mainstream media. And this was the struggle with, we were marked as Green Party because it was started by Green Party. The topics are politics, critical political, that covers the Green Party ambitious as well, but Green Party works very harmonical. They want a larger audience without conflict, so it could match very much to the festival of Green Party. And this was our aim, to say no, it has nothing to do with Green, because we don't want harmony. We want really to challenge and to go to the conflict. And for example, Greens couldn't deal with worldwide basic income. This topic, for some feminists, LGBTQ kind of anti-racist topics, they can stay behind it and instrumentalize it in a way, but for many others not. And this was the kind of the try to open this, to enlarge these practices, and that this is interesting now. How many generations after 10 years change? Who are the people who want to work with WIENWOCHE, with project? What are the topics? What is relevant now? Because in our time was the first historical refugee movement. So there, I don't know, all these topics on basic income, battlerin topics was quite hot. I have to think what else. Wahlrecht, no? The right to vote. All these things are since years and years, and so we took campaigns that already took place to adapt and to think with resources to focus again on them, on this, or anti-deportation movies or campaigns. Actually, the topic of this post-migrant festival of cultural production is everything for everybody. No? To think on not on level of identity politics of so to say, to mark migrants, and this is the migrant festival. No, this was not topic at all. But all these political topics, to think of inclusion and alles für alle, no? Everything for everybody.
But it's not alles für alle still, you know, like we didn't manage to like achieve, you know, like somehow I believe that, you know, in order to achieve such very hard like things for some voters, some Austrian voters to accept is a long way, and it's I would say purely political way, you know. I think here we are more facilitating a space for many different expressions to appear so that we could see in which directions they would like also to go and what are the topics important for them coming from these perspectives. I think that we cannot completely cut out the identity politics struggles because they brought a lot to our society, and but I always ask myself, why is the like common struggle not happening yet? You know, why like the society is so divided that like you know, an Austrian worker and a migrant worker, they could never like, or they could still not come together, you know, and this is something that I think needs to be solved politically and not like by an art and activist festival.
Yeah, but how can you take these issues and these topics and to focus, to tackle, and to paint more? No? You cannot solve it, but to bother all the time. Yeah.
Maybe I can add a few points. I think that especially in these years when I think it makes a difference also how long have you been living here, for what kind of festival you will do, you know, and how deeply you will go in this kind of courageous, provocative, on the edge, you know, daring a lot, because you have to be able to communicate and to kind of like face the consequences of this kind of interventions. And I think this was your big advantage, and you went sometimes really, really far. You did some great projects, and I think it was also necessary to connect people from Austria and immigrants, because in this way, to create a solidarity, that people can get some privileges that they didn't have before through this kind of connection. And you did this a project about voting. I was there coming as a festival visitor. So there were these kind of moments. I mean, this is happening in a kind of like a cultural festival, you know, of course, it won't now change the situation in Austria, but it's some kind of like a moment and possibility. That was for us very important, these networks, you know, because through these networks and through this connection of people, you get some possibilities to go beyond these structural problems, to find possibilities. This is very small, you know, it's a very micro level, but it's change reality of some people for some periods of time and maybe offer other possibilities. And for us also it was experience, because we also had this topic of revolution, and we come from the country where it was a big topic, revolution. You know, I have family like a great grandfather who was fighting in October Revolution, you know, so my parents were communists, so this is the background. And I remember back then that it was like, how we will talk about revolution, you know, this is not something like that you can really so easily serve in the public. And I think that's maybe what was interesting, because it's still kind of like you intervene in some political debates, because this Green Party story, it borders, because you are always again and again in this kind of Wahlkampf, instrumentalized for it. But also you can ignore it, you know, they spend money, pay up a lot of money to publish some kind of like ridiculous accusations that makes no sense. Are really like, and then you also know how politics works.
The conservatives, no? The ÖVP and FPÖ.
Yes, the conservatives, you know, they publish this, they're paying the festival instead of building an elevator in Stephansplatz, but you know, this is a different budget resources. But this is the Wahlkampf. Huh? And you can also use this to kind of, you know, you have also some kind of political platform. Yes, this was coming to my mind. Also, we did with basic income. This was also a big topic at the Dolce Far Niente edition of the festival. Yes, this was my comment on this, what was taught before.
And it was a good interest, good experience, because I don't know how it's now, but our imagination, and we are so happy, so to say, to start, and this is the new state festival, Staatsfestival, and we want to do it great with really our desires of demanding of political struggles, and it came out that the journalists, the media, never has interest on it. Falter never wrote about this, never invited us as curators, as new curators, with migrant identity, new qualification in the city. Completely ignoration, never in Falter. Every new festival and new Leitung, so to say, is invited for such things, but we not. I don't know, how is your experience?
We neither.
I mean, maybe it's a big dream to say, oh, we think we are kind of new part of the cultural production as curators with budget that we can create festival, and maybe the criteria is not that. I don't know. Huh? I speculate now what could be. The editorial boards of this.
Yeah, but we are here like this is the 11th edition of the festival, so
yeah,
you were there. I think
it's
a big difference in the sense that you were a revolution already by getting this opportunity to make such a festival. And after 10 years, there are many initiatives that somehow take on the assignments and desires and put them into another space of struggle, So somehow, for me, it would be really interesting if we would be able somehow to trace what is the actual impact of WIENWOCHE Festival onto the cultural scene, and how these first years really formed the independent scene. This would be, a very interesting analysis to follow up. But, like for now we have mostly artists, but every one of us is affiliated with the Academy of Fine Arts, first of all, in some way. So we have artists who are also parts of WIENWOCHE, taking part in WIENWOCHE and taking part in Curated by, or taking part at WIENWOCHE or taking part at Belvedere 21. So it's a huge difference of I think also the decisions of the new generation that wants to take part in the official art scene as well, It doesn't say, no, I don't want to be in MUMOC, but they do appear, somehow in these high-level art events.
Yeah, but we started with the idea to develop a project together with the curators. So it was quite large topics, and on the yearly topics, so to say, and it was clear we changed always a little bit. We started with the open call and created working groups, that during the production working groups have to come together. All this, there is no time. It came the experience that actually it's of this forcing working together, a new project in short time in this festivalization frames. It's too much pressure, so we changed it. But it was clear to say on the applicants, we develop a project together. So you apply with your ideas, but we come together to discuss the idea, and we have proposals. And we don't wait at the end what is the outcome, and this is the program you wrote by yourself, but it was all the time interaction on the budget conditions of the payment, of the working conditions, of the output, on the places, what could make sense. It was debate, and it was work together. So this was kind of a bit confusing by many projects, because it was conflictual of the autonomy and power positions. But it was a lot of thinking together, so to say, what makes sense, what kind of spaces we make sense for this idea, to expand it more, to sharpen more. Where is the place or space? No? What kind of audience we can search? How to describe, for who to describe your project to be understandable? Not about languages, with the 4 or 5 languages we tried again as well, but it came out that everybody who is interested and follow the festival and cultural events already knows in English and German. So all these other languages they were important also to reach here and there, but it was not didn't bring the big wave of visitors. No? So it was there's some accidental,
But I think that this is one of the biggest challenges, also that the networks are so small and the groups know each other and they talk to each other, like you say, debating about the budgets and finances, and then also how to spread out within the city. Like the city is also is a big city, but the scene itself, it's small, but it also is the question if WIENWOCHE wants to go abroad over this circle of left-wing, woke, queer, anti-racist groups of people. Is this like it also, does WIENWOCHE want to go further or not, like to go out of this circle? And I thought like that this bringing it to a more international level could like enrich also the scene, like to bring more different aspects to the scene, to the local scene. But also, I think it's also very important to encourage the scene itself, and also the young artists coming, the young collectives and activists, to encourage them to bring their visions and projects to life. And I think for that, WIENWOCHE is super important for young artists to have the chance, or also like not established in Vienna artists, to how they can bring their energy together and also get some money to develop something. But I think that also another point is care. Like there are many projects, there are many new artists or people working on projects like maybe for the first time. How WIENWOCHE sees itself in terms of care for the people. Is it just give money and maybe help some with questions and so on, or go really more deeper into this advising, supervising, and taking care of the artists and projects? I mean, WIENWOCHE is already doing that and does it probably always, but I think this is always something kind of a struggle with, yeah.
But supervising is one thing that, like somehow the groups are very self-aware about their identities. And if you come from different community and you want to maybe try to, let's say, propose another perspective, it's very, it happens very often that they get offended, by this supervision moment. Even though it's our job to kind of, facilitate the platform for them and to work with them, and it will be really great if more of the groups would be open to kind of exchange the perspectives, the approaches, but it unfortunately doesn't happen completely, I would say. As Petja said, like they were intervening in the projects, they were changing budgets, This is today something which is a bit tricky, and we really try to respect their decisions, their approaches, and not use them, definitely very important, not to use them as like tokens, of representation. This is for me very important. Even though they find some things very important, we shouldn't be like, yes, we have, this and this, we should really take care, and we try to take care about how we talk to the communities and how we address them and how we put their problems and not our fantasies on their problems, somehow. And they definitely have different problems that we sometimes imagine, and this is completely okay,
I can just add that I think that sometimes this role is kind of very diplomatic, and I think these people applied for a public call, they formulated something, and for us, for example, it was a kind of strategy to respect this, what was formulated, and if people need, more from us, we offer it. Then we were ready to work together, but some people, I mean, this is also important, these people are not young artists, there are old people who have a lot of experience somewhere else, and I think this is problematic always to kind of like this curator who has to kind of do all this, people just want to do their stuff, and this is to respect, I think, and those people who need this kind of working together, you recognize this. So it's always very different process. I don't think that there is one way. And I think it's important to be diplomatic in this role.
But I think it's also the surrounding field, like when the project is happening, not only by helping the artists, either if they are older or younger, whatsoever, that the festival itself, I don't know how to say, it's somehow the projects feel sometimes out of the festival, you know, that you have like more of a festival feeling, that there are people, I mean, there are mostly, and I know, you know, that there may be sometimes too less financial or too less budget for enough production, that there are enough people also, you know, when there's a anti-racist work in the public, in the city, and there are not enough people to take care, maybe there are some racist arguments or something happening also in that sense. So I think it's on different levels. And also, of course, it has to be respected when people just want to make their work and everything. But I think, yeah, this is just some people don't say that they want to have help, and
yeah, I think because WIENWOCHE, it is about diversity and diverse groups and different people, different needs actually comes. It's generate, like, because there are projects like really that are dealing with, as you say, anti-racist topics, but the projects who are dealing about disabilities, vulnerabilities, and people who are coming from totally marginalized positions, and that's why this is, I think, a big challenge, how to, not to impose, but how to take part and be in a support also. This is what you are saying, no?
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the very important, actually, so to say, values of WIENWOCHE, that also thinking in a structural way as well, you know, like how the team also, I can talk from the team, we are always facing such a huge bureaucratical processes, you know, people are working a lot only to do Abrechnung or whatever, you know, so this is like, so there are so many layers in exchange and support, and yeah, not only thinking about like what would be the result of the event, but also about the processes, and what also turned out throughout all these years, and I have to say I've been working on this publication on 10 years of WIENWOCHE, so I was going through archives and also contacting people previously and getting some feedbacks. It turned out that WIENWOCHE was important for many, again, to come back to these new positions in the city, you know. Doesn't matter if these people were really already, how to say, already had developed their own, they have a strong CV somewhere else, but to enter in this cultural and artistic field in Vienna, it's difficult. It was difficult, but in like many said this, that through WIENWOCHE they then came to some other bigger institutions as well. I mean, I can say this also for myself, and I came here because of Academy of Fine Arts, but you know, I was there in this bubble somehow, and this was like I also was facing visa questions and visa issues, you know, and I think in WIENWOCHE was, for me, the first time I was accepted, and this was a surprise for me that my CV, that was already a CV, you know, was accepted in a way, you know, so yeah.
And I have to say, our experience from our editions was people who were already working politically in political civil society movements, activists. They developed some projects in the frame of WIENWOCHE to focus their topics, but after a while they were very open to say, I'm not an artist, or kind of don't go to the cultural field, my work is somewhere else, and we continue the work, whatever. It was the access to resources and to raise a voice about these topics that we are working in, and others that were quite interested and were trying to develop some projects in WIENWOCHE and to to make experience with formats, with aesthetics, with public relations, with Abrechnung, with all these things, many decided really to focus on cultural production and to be part of the cultural scene. CV is something else, but they are really very different experience with people who developed great projects, and they say, now in this frame, I see my limits, no? And I go with my work somewhere else. But the accessibility and the access to resources to develop these debates, topics, projects, formats. No? This was the idea.
Yeah, I think that this also changed within the years, that the people, the work, like how art is seen, and it's also seen as work. And you know, I know it from like 10 years ago, there was so much enthusiasm to create art, to create projects. And now I think the most people want really to get paid. And also coming back to the care point is like the self-exploitation within the art field and art scene is huge. And I think that this is also a shift within the scene. And I think still it's a struggle for a lot of people or artists that they get a project and then in the end they work so much that it's too less. Maybe it's not paying them the amount of work. But still there are a lot of people like want to be part, and but I think many people see it different than, I don't know, 10 years ago.
I think this is interesting to bring this topic of fair pay because it's kind of one of many contradictions of WIENWOCHE. Because on one hand, these people like Rado, you were around the IG, Bildende Kunst and all this long ago, this fair pay. This was the beginning of fair pay. And you introduced some standards into WIENWOCHE for the projects, and WIENWOCHE has this image. I remember people say WIENWOCHE pays good, you know. But it's also always, on the other hand, lack of money. The resources are still always
then small projects.
So it's small projects, and even people get enthusiastic. Also for WIENWOCHE team, it's a lot of work. For the limits are all people go beyond the limits, and you have to also kind of. You have to pay these workers, so also when they work more and so on. So I think this is an interesting point of this fair pay back then, you know, before it came now it's in the subventions, it's starting. I don't know how they will do because of inflation, but this is, to come back to this fair pay as it became, people got this awareness through the struggles that came from bottom up. And this is, I think, one of the challenges for the future of WIENWOCHE, how to kind of also go further with this fair payment, how to kind of...
I mean, fair pay, there was always critics about the structure of working conditions and payments. So, but this was to think about now, how to structure budgets, transparency. It was the Verein was founded with the Transparenzvereinbarung, so also for the subventions for everybody. So all this transparency and clear criteria, and then negotiations with the participants, and it's always people who are. It's a problem.
May I maybe start some other topic, which is more like this difference between projects that, because we have money to do projects, so and we are fully financed by the city of Vienna, which, by the way, is not completely fair pay kind of related. We try to stick to this, but we are not financed from different sources that do support officially the fair pay campaign. This moment of having infrastructural projects as well. So we definitely need more money for things as developing our own archive and putting the work of the 10 years online. So how do we address these moments of this huge need of you know, showing that yes, we are here for 10, 11 years already, and we need to somehow have this present in a very accessible, open, transparent way, which we don't at the moment, unfortunately. So how do we decide on spending money like when we know that there is limited resources? How do we then decide on kind of positioning the festival in the city, or sustaining the position of the festival, or building the new position which is stronger, versus giving money to only the projects, because projects don't deal with, you know, like building the archive or WIENWOCHE, you know. Nataša and her team, they were working 2 years on the publication that Sara presented a bit at the very beginning. I mean, this is also, you know, infrastructural thing that is also needed after so many years, that because we have to show that what is WIENWOCHE, what is that has been happening throughout the years, in order to, like, let's say, position ourselves, because like, what will happen with the festival in 10 years? Let's come to the third round, maybe.
Yes, I think festival will be bigger. Has to have more money. It needs to kind of think itself in a different way, you know, to expand this city-based festival. I think this way to kind of follow up all these changes, and also like to, I think it would be important to think how to be more sustainable, you know, how to, you know, if people are changing. Maria was 1 year, you know, what can you do in 1 year? It's so much to learn, and then you are gone, you know. I think these are very important things to think about, how to make it grow without also losing fast the knowledge, because I mean, of course, it can be like every time fast new, and but this is the question if this is what Vienna needs, WIENWOCHE needs, because this kind of like festivals and institutions, I mean, is something to think about, you know, how to contest this kind of fashion, you know, if of, you know, getting attention because you have this and that new person, but how can you be more sustainable? How can you grow? How can you improve?
Yeah, keep the knowledge.
This is,
I mean, that's why we're here this evening, to share this knowledge,
yes,
because it's really hard for me to get access to the experience of the former directors who were the first year. How do I know some things? And of course, I mean, the information travels, but somehow there was like these exchanges, somehow never like this so-called Übergabe, like kind of this moment of former directors giving like information to the new ones. There is so much things lost there, so unfortunately.
And for example, the festival is important because in our time, always kind of independent colleagues, initiatives, journalists, also internationally. We were in, I don't know, Zagreb, Berlin, Zurich, here and there. We were invited to present the festival because it's interesting concept, interesting production, all these cross interdisciplinary political projects, this amount of projects, that there's so many different formats and experiments, actually is quite of thinking or trigger to thinking in other cities, in other spaces, in other models of subvention and creating a festival. So in this sense, it's quite important also in this way is perceived internationally. But it's very, yeah, somebody have to, all this archive, and I'm teaching with a lot of projects, no? Because it's really 10 years, there's so many important projects, actors and debates and topics and formats that are part of the history of cultural production in this city and of the struggles. So this archive is very important. Maybe it's really to think how to develop these two lines of amount of projects that happens and to and the yearly topic. Yeah, sorry.
I also think we should try to share some knowledge and experience with other cities around the world who is doing migrant activism and art, because I think it's a very interesting concept, like because you're engaging with some kind of city festival, but it's all about also political struggles and issues, and it's very dimensional. And I don't know what are the other examples in another cities in global context. So I mean, this can also, if we want to, think about the future of WIENWOCHE and to have another 10 years, I think there is a really big public invisibility, because people who are not really suffering from this kind of problems, they are not really aware, and then they see a public performance, okay, they enjoy it in a minute and they take it, but that WIENWOCHE's audience is like very specific people who are kind of from these communities, so actually...
But it's not about migrant struggles, it's about...
and not only migrant, but political
demands
struggles.
and political struggles in the migrant society.
Yeah.
Who is working? Whoever is working. It's not about defined on identity. It's defined of challenging and demanding.
Who is
on
underrepresented
these topics,
and discriminated? But I like this kind of examples. I don't know which cities, if you know.
I think this would be interesting, because when we were in the preparation, I also said now I'm in Innsbruck. I moved like for private reasons, and then I was thinking, in Innsbruck there is no festival, or there is not cultural like in Linz maybe you would have Micić that also does cultural, this kind of connection between art and activism, and in Innsbruck there is not something like that, so you start from the zero, I don't want to have always like these DJs who are Austrian or work with, like the work with the local community. It's like start from zero. I mean, it's not for me, it's for zero, because there is not institution that is so visible. Of course, there are these practices, and I get to know them through like going around and talking to people, but this is something now, for example, I was talking to some Ukrainian filmmakers who are now away because of the war, and the first question was, what kind of refugee or migrant communities are there, who do you know, with whom do you work? And I think this would be interesting to kind of make some event to kind of make this kind of exchanges. This is a very good idea.
Extend the WIENWOCHE a little bit.
But maybe we should think slowly about the time, and I don't know what is the plan now, to how long to, because we can also then have a drink and talk informally. I don't know, how do you...
Maybe if you have some questions or you would like to comment on something, like or put in some idea to discuss in the next minutes.
Yeah, I also thought before that maybe like within the next 10 years, maybe WIENWOCHE could be on a more international level, but while we are talking, I was thinking maybe it could be more relevant or interesting to go more on the countryside, like what is the what wants WIENWOCHE to achieve also, like it's social and political change, and also shift perspectives. And I think like on the countryside it's more needed, like in other big cities around Europe, but yeah, hopefully WIENWOCHE is still there in 10 years. Maybe it has a new office, barriere-free, and has more money, and is still shifting perspectives. And
We have the board members here, yes.
The board members are here?
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, there was one question, because there are not all former directors here, and there was also, I think in such a festival, conflict might be also an important topic within the structures, and how to deal with it, and some was also quite publicly debated. But I wanted to say that or speak kind of as a testimonial, and say that WIENWOCHE was really very important for me, and also knowing different or having different experiences with cooperation. I found it really amazing how the support structure was, and I find it really important I just know the festival from the inside, or from working with WIENWOCHE under your Nataša and Ivana's directorship, and it was really exceptional. And also the archive thing. I think I just today I wanted to kind of get back and maybe use the link, but then the English version was gone. So I think it would be really great, and I'm having kind of some sort of website and online presence, but I think it's also very useful and valuable for the people participating, and also building the archive, as I think WIENWOCHE is really something, and it would be great to have this shown for all sides. And what else? Yeah, the green and red and everything projects. I think maybe it's also worth not just thinking about infrastructure and more money and more, let's say, work positions that are needed when a project becomes more like institutionalized. I also think maybe some sort of professional lobbying or Interessenvertretung or PR that is also trying to protect the festival from negative things going on. We see, for example, with Okto, there can also come danger with it when something is not perceived, or being perceived as green, it might be not the right color within a political power relation current. Yeah, so I wish all the best to WIENWOCHE, and might it grow, and also I think it's very worth to think about what really makes sense in terms of international, local, or what you were suggesting, going rural. Yeah, I think it's really good to take time to really make these complicated decisions. So thanks, and all the best for the next years.
I would just like to comment on one thing. All of the former directors and curators were informed and invited. Some of them answered, some of them didn't answer. And we're happy that at least we have everyone, like at least one person from all the ears. When it comes to PR and marketing, this is a very soft spot of the WIENWOCHE, because we are, in a way, controlled, if I may say like this, how we spend money. And advertising is not like one of the points where we are strong at. So it would be really hard to negotiate some things. And thank you for bringing this up. It's something to see how we can make it work still with limited resources that we are allowed to spend for this type of things.
It's a question of priority what you want to spend. It's a question of priority for what to spend the money. Because the money is really, for PR is really eating the full festival money, so, or half. But yeah, we have to think on strategies.
I think that, I mean, we had one talk to prepare, and we said I think it's great because that this happens, because we also had these thoughts to organize something like that. And I think now it makes even more sense, because there are so many people who did it, there is knowledge behind. And we said in this preparation talk that there are some things would be nice to gather again and talk through in a kind of different situation, not as part of the festival and public event, but more internal, like feedback and think tanks. I think this would be good, and it's not, important that you're interested. I think this is really something that makes sense, and yes, I think.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the offer. Yes, we will gladly take it.
Thank you so much for the insights. If there are any further questions, let's talk at the bar. And to the next great WIENWOCHE, and thank you so much for the cooperation, and get some rest after the party tonight. Enjoy evening. Thank you.